It's Inside Coverage. We're back. It's week one. He's Frank Schwab. She's Jori Epstein. I'm Jason Fitz. And guys, let's just start with the very basics here. We have spent months twiddling our thumbs. We have spent months clapping. We've spent months celebrating together, just trying to get to this week. So before we even get into anything, Frank, let's just have a little bit of joy down in our heart, because last time I checked, we actually have a week one football game that we're going to preview. A real, meaningful, counts in the standings football game that we can bet on, that we can talk about. Like, things just feel right this week.
I think that this show is going to be awesome based on our kind of pre-taping excitement. We're all fired up. Look, I said this often. I got to go through it again, Fitz. This is my second favorite event, I guess, on the sports calendar. First is the first 2 days of March Madness.
This podcast is your second favorite event?
Well, of course,
Maybe.
obviously, Jori.
Yeah,
we feel the same way. That's why we have to
be.
keep you around, Frank.
It's true. First 2 days of March Madness, easily the best day on the sports calendar. Week one of the NFL is right near it because everything is good. All of our fantasy teams are 0-0. All of our Super Bowl bets are still alive. We haven't lost any parlays or anything like that. Our favorite teams have not lost, and we have hope that they can make the playoffs. Everything is fun about week one. I can't wait for this week one. Like, we were just talking about Bears-Titans. I can't wait to watch Bears-Titans. Like, I'm not going to say that in week 14 maybe, but I'm going to say it right now. Week one is awesome. I am so happy it's here. Let's go. Let's play some football.
No, I think the whole offseason, we have all of these questions, so much speculation. It's exciting for fans in some ways because there's potential. No one's lost yet. I mean, that's why I love visiting teams in OTAs and training camp, because no one has a loss on their record. So everyone is a little more willing to talk. But I think now you get here and it's like, hey, let's start trying to find answers to these questions.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, last year, a year ago, right now, Frank and I did our first ever show. Our first ever show together was Sunday night.
Do we have an
Happy anniversary!
Did you get me anything?
Cake. I got you cake. It should be there any
You need
minute.
one of those like whiteboards where you hold up a happy anniversary sign?
Well, look, a whiteboard's good, but I'd rather deliver crumble cookie to Frank. That just feels like the right thing to do.
I mean, if you're going to do that, fine, but I don't think you did.
Well, I mean, there's still time. The Sunday is the technical anniversary, Jori, and I'm a man, all right? We hold these things to the very last second. We don't actually pre-plan anything, and then we overpay to get things delivered at the last second. That's what my people do.
I love that you're saying that, because my boyfriend and I the other day were discussing our anniversary, and he was like, whatever day you want is fine. I was like, no, we know when we went on our first date. Like, we don't have to guess here. Continue.
Do we? I mean, sometimes we don't. Like, he was trying to get out of Jeffrey. I don't play, but I sat with...
Maybe y'all do.
Yeah. By we, you mean you, and you'll make sure he's informed. I sat next to Frank at the Venetian, the Yahoo Sportsbook inside Venetian Resort. And it was incredible just because there was energy to the people that were there, to the fans that were there, to everybody just hanging out. Like, it just hits different in week one. Like, I know Frank likes to go to Buffalo Wild Wings every single Sunday to watch games. I'm actually, I'll be hosting the fantasy football show from noon to 1. As soon as that's over on Sunday, I'm going to go somewhere. I usually like to watch at home. I'm going to go somewhere just because I want to be around the energy of people. That's what week one really captures for the NFL fan base is, that energy. Now, speaking of the energy in this show, I should remind everybody, Inside Coverage now obviously on its own feed, and we're into our regular schedule. So you'll get a show from us on Wednesdays, you get a show from this feed on Fridays, and then of course Frank and I will be back on Sunday nights reacting to every single show. By then he'll have his crumble cookie and won't be able to complain. So that's fair.
On camera, I expect you to be eating crumble
cookies on camera.
By the way,
no lie about that.
I just want to plug that Friday show real quickly, because what I love about our colleague Charles Robinson, who's been at this company for something like 20 years, is he's so well informed. He's constantly talking to GMs, coaches, execs, like all of these people who just know exactly what's going on. And I love when we get him on the podcast, because he just starts saying these things. And I'm like, I don't think you realize, Syrup, that nobody else knows these things, or like he thinks things are known because he knows everything. All of which is to say, if you really want to have the inside knowledge going into the weekend for shows, I love that we have Syrup coming on Friday, giving us those nuggets to go into the weekend informed.
You're right. I think the tone difference here, Wednesday's show with the three of us is always going to feel a little bit like, three buddies hanging out. Friday's show, there's a dynamic between C-Rob and Frank that mommy and daddy fight. And I just sort of mediate this whole thing. So mommy and daddy are going to fight on Fridays. It's going to be electric. It's going to be dynamic. Frank's going to throw out a hot take. Charles is just going to absolutely throw that thing into the trash quickly.
Brotherly love.
Yeah. And I'm just going to sit back and watch it all.
I never would tell him that, but I do love Charles, and we fight all in good fun. But we do fight. It's awesome. It's great. I enjoy arguing with Charles. Jori was good. Look, Jori was getting after it about the Cowboys thing on our last episode. Like, you two are fighting a little bit bit. Maybe you two could be the new Frank and Charles bickering at each
The
other.
best part was that one of our producers texted us after being like, loved that segment when you guys were kind of fighting on the Cowboys. And I was like, I have no memory of the conversation.
It was like my parents fighting. I just sat in a corner. Like I didn't know what to do. Like I just went to my room and cried a little bit. It's fine. It's okay.
Jory and I fighting about anything is a little like the nerd table at the cafeteria, just going at it, and everybody just sits back. They're like, "Oh, fun! They're fighting." Like it doesn't have the same to it, but we'll find things to disagree about. Now, that being said, one nuance that we believe on this show. We talk about the fact that this show is based on the how and the why of all things NFL. But one thing that we all believe, all three of us, is that two things can be true at the same time. And I feel like I live this in my life, in my personal life, in business and everything. Like I'm very rarely black or white. The world is sort of gray to me and everything. And it really comes into play with some of the biggest stories across sports because it is possible for, a big take and a medium take and all of these things that on two different sides of everything to live in one little perfect package together. So we're going to break down some different teams where two things can be true at once. And Jori, I want to start with you because I know, frankly, you've been passionate about the 49ers. Tell me how two things can exist at once.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I want you to start rating all takes and telling us which ones are the medium takes because I want to know exactly where the threshold cuts off. But
Perfect.
I do think for the 49ers, it's totally true. I think two things can be true. I think their offseason was unideal. And also, I don't feel more concerned about their prospects because of that offseason. Like, are holdouts ideal? Absolutely not. I had an executive from another team when I was asking him about the 49ers tell me, he was like, look, like, I view a holdout as a path of mutual destruction. It's not good for the player and it's not good for the team. And yet every single year we see the 49ers, whether it's Nick Bosa, whether it's Deebo Samuel, now we have Trent Williams, we've got Brandon Ayuk, whether it's a hold in, hold out, it doesn't really matter. We have all of these guys who are asking for more money, knowing that all of their teammates need to be paid too, knowing that, hey, quarterback Brock Purdy probably needs to be paid next season or next offseason. And so I think that you look at that, you look at obviously like the horrific shooting that Ricky Pearsall was subject to last weekend. And real life scare. Like this is beyond if you're making 30 million or 32 million. This is like his life was at risk. And that was really scary for the team. And you just have all sorts of things going on with the 49ers. But I think that one, from a contract standpoint, because let's not try and equate those two things, they deal with this every year. And that's why I just kind of stopped listing when it's like, oh, the Steelers are going to get their receiver. No, they're not. Like the Niners are going to figure it out. It's going to happen before the season. That's the other thing. They don't even get to like the Chris Jones, Kansas City part where it's like, hey, we're going to miss a game. We're going to lose a game. And then Chris Jones is going to sign for a little bit more money. Like they figure it out before the season. So I think that while you don't necessarily want all of this discomfort, I loved the tweet that I saw where someone said like, John Lynch is me in high school not getting any paper done until I'm up against the wall at the deadline. Like, yeah, like sometimes deadlines make deals. That's what the Cowboys always said when I was covering them. And so I think that on that road, you have that. Thankfully, it looks like Ricky is going to make a full recovery based off what they're saying and that he is stable. And so it's more of he's not going to have long-term life quality impacted by this from what we can tell. And so I think that you sort of have, if anything, kind of like hey, let's all be a little more grateful, a little more present in the moment and kind of lock in and realize like this is our lives and we should really appreciate what we have in one another. And so I think, yes, unideal, I'm not more concerned about the Niners season. How about you guys?
I'll disagree with you and say I am a little concerned about the 49ers. Now, maybe I'm going down the same dumb road I went down last preseason when I was saying, oh, watch the 49ers might regress a little bit. And then a quarter into that game against the Steelers week one, it was obvious the 49ers are the 49ers. But I mean, since really the Super Bowl, there's been a lot of bad vibes about this team and a lot of, the holdout stuff. We can't be sure. Like Trent Williams might be the greatest offensive tackle of all time. But it's really hard to sign on a Tuesday and play on a Monday. Like, is he going to be Trent Williams we all know and love against a really, really tough Jets team? Same with Brandon Ayuk. I mean, you go back, we've completely forgotten Drake Greenlaw is not starting the season with them. He's one of their best defensive players. Obviously tore the Achilles running onto the field for defensive possession in the Super Bowl. There's just been a lot of kind of negativity about the 49ers. They're going to be a good team. Like, I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs or anything like that. They're going to win that division and all that. But the only thing that matters for this team is winning a Super Bowl. The history of Super Bowl losing teams is not very good. The Super Bowl hangover is real. I'm a little concerned about the 49ers. I'm not picking them to win the Super Bowl or even make the Super Bowl this year. And a lot of it is just this, just the bad vibes, the holdouts, I just don't think were good for them in any way. Maybe they get off to a slow start. Maybe there's an injury early on. A lot of holdout guys do get hurt. I'm not wishing it upon anybody. The Ricky Pearsall thing is, I don't even want to take that into football. It's just so terrible, and I'm glad Ricky is fine and he's going to recover. But it's not great either. So I just have a little bit of concern about the 49ers, especially early in the season with the whole Super Bowl hangover as well.
I'm going to subtweet your two things can be true with two things can be true about something you just said, Frank, because I think you're right.
Medium take coming.
No, this is hot. No. Oh, I mean, this is medium. So you just mentioned Trent could struggle week 1. Okay, who cares? Like, if the 49ers get blown out by the Jets,
fine.
Who cares? Because two things can be true. The 49ers are only going to be judged by a Super Bowl, which means weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4 to me are fairly irrelevant as long as they wrap everything up and they get themselves to where they need to be by the end of the season. And guys, like, the biggest thing to me, I keep thinking with all this contract stuff, is it just doesn't matter. Like, fans freak out about all of this, and I get it. But look, I don't care if we're talking about Jamar Chase and fans saying, well, he's got 2 years left before he should be doing this and all these. No, like, at this point, we know that a team will give up on a player whenever they want to. They have the right to. They can just basically wipe their hands of any player at any time with very little financial consequence that actually means anything to the player. So I'm not going to fault a player for turning around and guarding their business as much as a team guards their business with every single player. So if a guy wants to hold out and get every dollar that he can, I have no problem with it. And I talked to George Kittle for Yahoo Sports last week. I asked him about Trent Williams, and he said flat out,
such a great interview.
He is, by the way. He's great. And he said, look, he's a future Hall of Famer that preps every day like a future Hall of Famer. We're not worried about Trent. I think that's true. Trent Williams is going to step in and he's going to be dominant. Does he need to be dominant week 1? No. Is that going to make me panic about the 49ers? No. I think by the end of the year, the 49ers are one of the 3 best teams in the NFC. And if you're talking about that proximity, then now it's all about, did you get lucky? Are you healthy? Did all of the things sort of break your way at the right time? None of this contract conversation to me is impactful to that. So for all of the chaos of the offseason, and I do agree, like, you don't want to have a chaotic offseason. You're also the 49ers. You also have the best coach that you can have in that situation. You've got one of the best coaches in the league. You've got a great GM. You've got talent all over the roster that's now paid and going to come in fat and happy. Like, the death and demise of the 49ers, wildly overrated to me. So that is two things can be true at the same. Jori, was that medium take?
Yeah, no. I mean, look, you're like getting literary on us at the end. I love that take. I also think that chaos is a relative term. And so it's chaotic if you do something that you're not usually doing and adding something to the mix. Shooting, obviously chaotic, and again, different from football. Holdouts, that is the bar, that is the norm for the San Francisco 49ers. It's like when you say, like, oh, NFC Championship, would that be a win for them? And I was listening to a podcast this morning where they were talking about how that's kind of the bar for this Niners team. Holdouts are the bar for the team. Now, I agree with you, Frank, that I'm concerned about the 49ers' health because we have seen so many injuries, particularly to their star players, quarterbacks, edge rushers, all of that over the years. I'm not concerned about Trent Williams because on one hand, Fitz, I agree with you that, yes, Trent Williams doesn't need to be good for the first 4 weeks. I also think to take that a step further, offensive linemen are just not in their prime during the first month of the season. That is a thing you see around the league. The way that the offseason is set up right now, the way training camp and preseason is set up right now, offensive linemen, a lot of coaches believe, have the furthest to go once they get into the season in terms of like getting into their peak form. Like, you call a lot of the offseason activities like a passing camp. And so, like, yeah, quarterback, receiver, they can get on the same page. Offensive linemen, 5 working in as one. That's just not going to be there. And so I don't think Trent Williams was going to be there whether or not he was practicing.
I will. Can I throw in this? I think this is more than a medium take. I think the Jets win week 1. I think they go to San Francisco and beat the 49ers. I think they're ready to show the world, like, hey, we got a quarterback now. We can go play. We actually can compete. I think that defense is awesome. And I do think the 49ers are going to struggle a little bit coming out of the gate. Not to the point where we're going to be worried about them necessarily long-term, like you talked about, Fitz, but just a little bit of a struggle early on with all the stuff they dealt with in August. And I just really like this Jets team. So, just to skip ahead a little bit, I'm taking the Jets.
But why? I mean, my counter to that is, what am I more concerned about? Am I more concerned about, a superior Hall of Fame fat guy that wasn't in camp? Or am I more concerned about a 3,722-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury that the last time he played meaningful football was okay? Like, we're just anointing Aaron Rodgers is like, he's going to come in and everything's going to be glorious and the magic is going to be there. Like,
he's better than Zach Wilson. Like, that's what they've been dealing with the last couple of years.
I'm going to get really meta and give us a two things can be true for, two things can be true for, two things can be true, which is that the Jets are going to win week 1, but the Niners are going to have the better regular season and better playoff run.
I don't agree about the playoffs. I think that we did our predictions. I picked the Jets to go to the Super Bowl, which means I'll win my bet with you, Fitz, because they got
Schwab,
I'm picking the Jets to go.
What's the show bet?
What's the show bet? We've already made one. The Jets got to win one playoff game, Fitz. Remember? We made that bet. It's on the board. It's on the board.
But here's my thing. I also think that Aaron Rodgers, it's great for him to be able to face this 49ers team before they really figure out their defensive line, because I think they have a lot of different pieces that are going to be moving, change in defensive coordinator, all the things. I don't think they're going to have that figured out by week 1. And so that is what we want Rodgers. And again, I know I just said the offensive line thing. I don't think the Jets offensive line is going to be settled, but it's in a very different place than where it was last year. I mean, to get Tyron Smith and knock on all the woods around, like Tyron hopefully will be healthy for the beginning stretch of the season. Hopefully he's healthy for the entire season.
But they've already backed themselves up. They drafted Fashanu in the first round. He looked good like in the preseason through camp. They're protected there. They have a first round pick ready to go in when and obviously Smith is going to miss some games. He hasn't played a full season in forever, but they have backups. Now this offensive line is much improved, and they're going from the absolute bottom of the barrel of quarterback to, you're right, maybe Aaron Rodgers isn't great at 3,722 years old. But can he be the 15th best quarterback in the NFL? Of course he can. He's a 4-time MVP. Like, this Jets team is loaded. You guys, I'm trying to tell you, when you look at their depth chart, you're like, whoa, get ready for the Jets. This is a really, really, I don't care if Hassan Reddick ever comes in, and I think he will. He has to. Either he's going to come in or retire, one of the two. I think this Jets team is ready to win. This is a really, really impressive roster they got.
This is going back to the nerdy table for a minute. When you guys talk about Rodgers being that old, I'm just like, wow, what must his telomeres look like? You know, those things that like are the part in your body when you break down in age, like that would be insane at 3,722 years.
I should acknowledge, by the way, at 3,722 years old, he is still younger than I am. So I will say that all day. Like, let's just acknowledge that. Number one. And number two, I just want to know, like, what the flavor is, Frank, like, what's your go-to here? Because you've obviously had all the Kool-Aid. So, like, now that you're drinking this Kool-Aid, let's just acknowledge. A
tropical punch really was always my jam. Yeah.
Let's just acknowledge, if an oft-injured offensive lineman was being backed up by a first-round draft pick offensive lineman on a bad football team, we would look at that.
Left tackle,
if you took the exact same thing and you put it on the Patriots, we would say, well, I don't know, man. Like, they're relying on a rookie to back up, this guy that may or may not make it through the season, but because it's the Jets, we're like, oh, it's going to be great.
No, it's not because it's the Jets. It's because when you have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, what he does for the offensive line is something different. When you think about what the quarterback needs to do and what the line needs to do and all of the protections. Like, I went to the Patriots camp this year. I talked to center David Andrews, who told me, and quarterback Bailey Zappi, who was still on the team at the time, told me that the way they're switching their offense, the center is now going to have more responsibility for calling out the protections. The quarterback can trump him, but this is a center thing. Well, Aaron Rodgers is calling the protections, calling the plays. Like, he is doing all these things, which allows the linemen to focus more on just like the physical elements of their job, because it's taking a lot of the mental element off. So there is a difference.
I acquiesce to all of that. The thing that makes me nervous is the physical portion of it, the reliance on somebody where you still don't have a good backup situation. You're relying on somebody that's coming off an Achilles injury. I still think that Achilles injuries for quarterbacks at his age, whether we're talking about Kirk Cousins or whether we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, I think that's a problem. I think two things can be true. Everything you just said can be true.
Their backup situation's okay now. They got Tyrod Taylor, whose name I can pronounce.
Tyrod Taylor, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, let's go. Let's see how that Super Bowl prediction works when Tyrod ends up starting 10 games. Okay, we got to move on to another team. Frank, give me a team on your mind with two things can be true at once. And I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Since I have the map of Denver in the background for those of you watching on YouTube.
Wow, you don't have your stadium.
We've been taping for like 20 minutes, Jori.
Where's your house? Where's your house in that map? Like, do you have like a little star?
It's down here. I'm a little south of Denver, Castle Rock, birthplace of Christian McCaffrey. But Denver's behind me, so I'll go with the Broncos here and say two things could be true. That Bo Nix and Sean Payton are going to be a really, really good combination. And Bo Nix and Sean Payton this year are not going to succeed. Like, I can tell you, look, Broncos fans are so starved for anything positive, right? It's been really, really long time since Super Bowl 50. It seems like lifetimes ago. Peyton Manning's already in the Hall of Fame. Like, that's the last time they were good at quarterback. So I get all the excitement for Bo Nix, but we're asking a lot of them right away. Like the Broncos fans think, oh, we're playoff contenders now. And that's not really the case in my mind. Oh my goodness. I saw we can compete with the Chiefs now. Oh, the over of 6.5 wins is the best bet we're ever going to make. Like it's just, and I get it. They want to be excited. Every fan base is excited. It's week 1. I totally get it. I'm just saying this is going to take a while. This is still, look, Bo Nix might have been the handpicked guy for Sean Payton. They keep saying that, whatever. But he's still the 6th quarterback off the board, right? Like, yes, Sean Payton is going to make it work with him. It's still going to take some time. I personally think they go to Seattle this week in week 1 and Mike McDonald's going to be like, oh, rookie quarterback against my defense. Yeah. Okay, let's go. I think they're going to get absolutely smashed week 1 by Seattle. And I just think it's going to take time. The Broncos roster is not that great. It's fine. Like they have some players. Patrick Surtain obviously just got paid. He's awesome. They do have some guys. They're not the Patriots or anything. But I just don't think that this combination of rookie quarterback with a mediocre roster is going to be a playoff contender this year. I even in a division that's very, very top heavy, and then there's 3 teams kind of, sorry, Fitz, battling it out for, hey, can one of us have a winning record? I still don't think the Broncos are going to be very good this year. But in 5 years, I do think Bo Nix is going to be absolutely competent running Sean Payton's offense, which is very, very good. Sean Payton's probably a Hall of Fame coach. I think he'll be fine. Just this year, pump the brakes a little bit, Broncos fans. It probably isn't going to happen right away.
Right. I think that if you were asking Bo Nix to come into the Broncos organization with a good run game, with a good defense, with great protection, and just sort of like not lose the game, manage the game, fine. Like he's played a lot of college games. I think he has enough of that. But as you said, going against Mike Macdonald in the Seahawks week 1, I think Mike Macdonald is probably a top 3 defensive coordinator you do not want to face in your first start in the NFL, because even if the Seattle defensive talent is not considered the most elite in the league, he is going to be able to elevate them against someone like that. Again, going back to what we were saying about Aaron Rodgers and what he does. If you have Seattle against Aaron Rodgers, well, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be fooled by a lot of that. And it's not a knock on Bo Nix to say that he's more likely to just because he hasn't seen it at the NFL level. Oh, by the way, everything's moving a lot more quickly now, a lot more athletic. The windows are different at the NFL level than in college. And so I think that it's just a lot to ask of Bo Nix. I don't know how I feel about Sean Payton and Bo Nix long term. Like, I think it has a chance. I know we're going to get to the Chiefs and we're going to get to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and their marriage. But before we go fully into that, one of the things that stuck out to me is when I was reporting the story on the Chiefs that we're going to talk about, someone told me that when you look at the marriage of Sean Payton and Drew Brees, Sean Payton probably would have been a very good coach without Drew Brees. Drew Brees probably would have been a very good quarterback without Sean Payton, but it was that marriage that really elevated both of them from very good to winning a Super Bowl and perennially contending. I don't know that we have that marriage here. And so I think you have to ask yourself, even if Sean Payton is very good, and I think he's going to give Bo Nix a lot more of a chance than he gave Russell Wilson last year, because he kind of decided he was going to set that one out pretty quickly. I still wonder how good it can really be.
If I went to Broncos fans and said, Bo Nix in his rookie year will complete 66% of his passes for over 3,000 yards with 26 touchdowns and 8 picks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
How
I know
would you
where
feel
we're
about
going
it?
here.
Everybody would say,
more.
oh my God, that's a great
That'd be
year.
unbelievable.
26
Yeah,
and
probably
8,
Frank,
3,000 yards.
You know whose stat line he's reading, Frank?
That's
Oh,
Russell Wilson's stat line from last season. 3,000
Yeah.
yards, 26 touchdowns, 8
Yeah.
interceptions.
Unlimited, yes.
Sorry, Broncos fans. Quarterback, while I think Russ is washed, and I've made it clear on this show over and over and over again that I think Russ is washed, quarterback was not really the problem for this team last year. Quarterback wasn't great. Quarterback wasn't a strength.
Then why do you... So if you're saying the stats and Russ were not the problem, then why do you say he's also washed?
Because I don't think Russ is very good. I think you had to, you manage the game. It's fine. He managed the game because he has a great offensive mind as a head coach. I do believe in Sean Payton as head coach. So I think Sean got the most juice out of that squeeze that he possibly could. And that's a credit to Sean Payton. That's not a credit to Russ Wilson. Like Russell Wilson's going to go and just, he'll be benched within weeks, and Justin Fields will have that job in Pittsburgh. In the meantime, Bo Nix, Bo is, you're right. He's a grown-ass man at this point. He's not a college kid coming in. He's played a lot of college football. He's lived an adult life. His decision to transfer to Oregon was one he made with his wife when they tried to figure, when I asked him which campus was better, Auburn or Oregon, he said, I can't really answer that. I've never been on the Oregon campus for anything. He just went, got an apartment, and lived there to play football.
I never went on a Wisconsin campus because I never went to class. So,
he is
the same thing.
Yeah. The difference is he's doing it because he's an adult playing football. You were just a bad student, Frank. Let's be honest.
Just played Madden all day. It didn't really help me. Yeah.
I think there's a moment here where Bo is good. And Bo has the opportunity to be good. But fixing Bo this year isn't going to suddenly make the rest of the roster better. This is a team that will battle the Raiders to finish in last place in the division, and that's fine because there's got to be a longer journey that you're headed down. Like Broncos fans, I think would actually have more joy in the ride if they would be patient and understand that it might be a 3 or 4 year journey before they get to where they're going, instead of looking at it and saying, this is the year we have to take a meteoric leap. The only thing the Broncos need to figure out this year is the marriage of Bo Nix and Sean Payton good? If the answer to that is yes, then you can fix everything else. You can start aggressively going towards it. If the answer to that is no, then you're up a creek, right? So that to me is just resetting the expectations would actually make Broncos fans happier in my mind.
Also, real quick, like we do have to recognize that we are getting very, 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 very excited about Bo Nix after 30 preseason passes. Like, guys, like, look, we both love Nate Tice, Charles McDonald, two of the smartest dudes I know. They were both really down on Bo Nix. I don't know that 30 preseason passes changes all that. Like, they kind of gotten some grief from Broncos fans I've seen who are in my mentions. It's like, oh, these guys just won't admit they're wrong, whatever. Well, why are they wrong? Like, there's no guarantee that Bo Nix is who we think he is just because he was good in the and he was very good in preseason. He looks the part. I think he's going to be good, but that's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that we're not sitting here at Thanksgiving saying, wow, did they make a mistake starting Bo Nix right away? Because he's really not great. He was a 6th quarterback off the board. He is a guy who a lot of draft experts did not like that much. We're just expecting Sean Payton to, I'm going to take this guy and make him a star. And he might. He's a really good coach. But I don't think that's a guarantee by any means that Bo Nix is just out of the box ready to compete for Rookie of the Year.
No, Frank, you make such a good point about what we can and can't take from preseason play, because I think that kind of brings me to how I feel about the Patriots and their two things can be true, which is this idea of like, yes, did Drake Maye play better in the preseason? Absolutely. He played great. I had coaches tell me they liked how he was passing downfield. They liked his response when he got immediate pressure on a play. They liked the way that he countered some of the potential mistakes that could have been going on. Like, they really appreciated a lot of the growth that he showed. But it still makes sense to start Jacoby Brissett over Drake Maye, even though Drake Maye was better in the preseason games, because this is not about going against vanilla preseason defenses. This is not about going against guys who are trying to make a roster. This is about going against the best guys on the team with the most intricate schemes that their coaches couldn't come up with. And so I think it kind of goes back to this thing of like, a quarterback can be really good and have a lot of potential and also not be ready to thrive at the NFL level. And that's why the Patriots are rolling with Jacoby Brissett now, because, hey, first of all, whoever's playing quarterback for the New England Patriots right now has to compensate for a lot of offensive line deficiencies and skill player deficiencies. On top of that, they're going to have to go against a Cincinnati Bengals defense in week 1 that's going to throw a lot of things at you. And Jacoby Brissett has seen that before versus Drake Maye, who has not. And so I think, again, we get into this, two things can be true of Drake Maye is the more accomplished passer, and as an individual, he is a better player. But Drake Maye playing individually better does not mean that he is better for the Patriots right now, or that it's better for the Patriots right now for Drake Maye to play and potentially kind of get those like seeing ghost situation going on. Because as a lot of executives kept telling me, you could really ruin a quarterback by throwing him out there at that point.
Okay, I want to get a response to this from Frank. I have thoughts on the Patriots too, but we got to pay some bills. So let's pay some bills, and then we will continue. Two things can be true, not just with the Patriots, but with one superstar team in the NFL. We'll do that when we come back. So we just heard Jori talking about two things can be true with the New England Patriots. Frank, I want to get your thoughts on this because Patriot fans are fired up about Drake Maye. And what did I just say? Like, I'll hold myself to this. Like, I just said the most important thing for the Broncos is that we figure out whether or not Bo Nix is the quarterback of the future, right? Like, so I can feel Patriots fans sitting here saying, I want to see Drake Maye so we can make sure we have the quarterback of the future. But I hear Jori also, and I think she makes a lot of sense when she says two things can be true. Like,
first time ever.
I mean, well, I always hear you. I just don't always agree with you. Frank, what do you think? I mean, at this point, we're like a brother and sister fighting. You and C-Rob are mommy and daddy. We are brother and sister fighting.
There you go.
Frank,
That's
what are
fine.
your thoughts on two things can be true for the Patriots?
Yeah, I do think that, I mean, it's clear Drake Maye's our best quarterback. And I get it. Like I just said, Bo Nix 30 passes. How can you say the same thing about Drake Maye? It's just that he just brings a different juice to the offense. I mean, Jacoby Brissett is totally fine if you have a good situation around him, like Cleveland a couple of years ago. He's not a miracle worker. He's not going to do well behind that offensive line, throwing to Hunter Henry 9 times a game or whatever. I just think that Drake Maye is going to make some plays out of nothing, and he'll give the Patriots a chance to succeed. But long term, that's not good. You don't want him going into bad habits. You don't want him getting sacked 72 times this year or whatever. So I think it's the right thing to sit him. It's just going to be so hard for them to sit him all year. And we've argued about this, Fitz, that you and Charles seem to think he's going to sit all year when that's just not realistic. This team's going to start like 0-7. And it's just, you can't trot out Jacoby Brissett for game 8 if you're 0-7. Like, it's just not going to happen in that market. Well, the one thing I'm interested to watch is Drake Maye and how he handles this whole situation. Like, we've already seen him. Look, he can't straight come out and say, look, our team stinks. We can't start this rookie quarterback. You can't say that. So he's got to dance around the subject. Like, he got caught saying, oh yeah, Drake Maye played Jacoby Brissett in the preseason. And then the New England beat writers, as they should, were like, you said that, but why is he not starting then? And he's like, well, I just meant that Drake had more playing time, which makes absolutely no sense. And we all know that. But Gerard is in a really, really tough spot where he can't speak freely about this. Everybody knows the deal. Everybody knows that this team doesn't have the infrastructure to support a rookie quarterback. It just doesn't. The only question is, when does it become too much? When do you finally get to the point of, we can't watch this every week? We can't just take an 0-17 this year. And not to say that the Patriots are definitely going 0-17, but at some point you just have to change quarterbacks because you're going to lose a lot of games. I think we all agree they're going to lose a lot of games this year.
I think what's challenging is that, on one hand, I appreciate his authenticity because it bothered me last year when Robert Saleh was like, well, Zach Wilson needs everyone around him to play better, because I just didn't think the locker room believed that. On the other hand, I think if Drake Maye were to do one thing differently, it would just not be to say that Drake has outplayed Jacoby. Like, I think that use of words, and again, we want guys to talk openly, so I'm hesitant to even call him out on that. But I do think that saying that made it be like, well, outplayed, doesn't mean his skill set is better. It was kind of a way that he worded things where it did call into question some of Jacoby's credentials for this job. And so I think he could have said what he showed us with his arm was at a higher level. Or, I mean, he told me this when I talked to him when I visited, which is that Drake is making some passes that we haven't seen around here in a long time. I think I would have probably wanted to tailor the praise a little more that way, because also when he says we're not going to go into the season saying what week is it that Drake is going to start. Well, when you say Drake outplayed Jacoby, you make it a matter of not only win rather than if, but also win this year rather than if this year.
But that's why, to me, if we're going to go, two things can be true on the Patriots. It's Drake Maye is the future. And I don't think anybody in the organization has more pressure this year than offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt. Because what you don't want to do is get into a situation where, this doesn't work. This offense is abysmal. They don't win any games. You fire the coordinator. Drake Maye's going into year 2 trying to learn a new offense, which is just absolute death for a young quarterback. And we have no idea what identity. I know you can take a shot every time I say identity on this show at this point, but we have no idea what the identity of this offense is going to look like. So it becomes paramount to me.
Or the defense without Barmore and Judon.
Sure,
I agree. The defense is not, and without Bill Belichick, the greatest defensive coach of all time.
But they're acting our defense will be fine and our offense is a work in progress. Their defense might be a work in progress too.
I think
no doubt, but the offense has to be the offense has to establish whatever the identity is that Drake Maye will be stepping into. There aren't defensive players that are about to be put into this next year that are growing, right? They have to figure out what this offense looks like so that when Drake Maye comes into it next year, he's an extra piece of something that's already been formed, so that we have an idea of what that looks like. I agree with you. They could be abysmal on both sides of the ball, but given the fact that they've had coordinator issues year in and year out, I know that was under Belichick, but now they have a new head coach that we know very little about. They have an offense coordinator that needs to establish what they're going to look like. We don't know what the defense is going to look like. All of these things have to normalize this year while we wait for Drake Maye to come in. If Drake Maye's not going to play, and I believe he shouldn't this year, if Drake Maye's not going to be playing, then it becomes even more important for the organization that the people that are there are establishing what the organization looks like for Drake Maye moving forward. That's the two things can be true for me and the Patriots.
You know what we're all setting up, right? That me and you, Fitz, we're going to be sitting here Sunday night talking about all the games, and we're going to be like, well, 84% of people had the Bengals in their survivor pools, and they're all eliminated because the Patriots pulled off the upset of week 1. That's just how the NFL works, right?
Oh, that does feel so doable now.
It is
to me, those things where they're not actually good, but something happens or they figure out
no
some way
Jamar
to
Chase
get.
and yeah. It's just, this is how the NFL works. So I'm sitting here talking about maybe they go 0-17, and my survivor pools will all be done by Sunday night by the time I talk to you, Fitz.
They're going to win 3 games. The question is just, what happens in those 3 games, and how many of us are just eliminated from our survivor pools? Okay, let's do another one of these, but let's go to a poly positive note here, because Jori, you've written on the Chiefs and what other teams can learn from the Chiefs. So give me 2 things can be true from Kansas City.
Yeah, I think 2 things can be true is that if you are another team in the NFL, you want to study the Chiefs, you want to understand their winning formula, and also you have no chance of replicating it. I did a lot of research on this, talked to 14 different people from 8 different teams throughout my training camp tours. Now we're talking GMs, coaches, players, really like a wide swath of people. And what I came to is that when you try and ask yourself questions about how the Chiefs operate, it's not really one way. And these questions ended up leading to paradoxes. Like, are the Chiefs consistent or are they constantly changing? Yes. Are the Chiefs trying to go with safe ideas or are they trying to take risks? Yes. And so I think that basically what the Chiefs have done is taken this structure of Andy Reid running the offense, Spags running the defense, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce on the offense, Chris Jones on the defense, and said, hey, we have these guys. Now we're going to keep reinventing ourselves. And I think that what was fascinating is when I talked to Cleveland Browns general manager Andrew Berry about this, is he said what a lot of teams run into when they win a Super Bowl is, we won a Super Bowl. This works. Let's keep doing it. And then the NFL changes, schemes change, coaches change, and you're not keeping up with what's going on around you. Versus what the New England Patriots did with Belichick and Brady is they would constantly reinvent their identity. So you still had the benefit of consistency with whether it was a Brady to Gronk, the same way it's a Mahomes to Kelce type thing. You still have these guys who understand each other so deeply, play caller understanding quarterback understanding target. And yet the way that you are operating within that really continues to change. And so I think that it's hard because if you were to say, like, how do the Chiefs play schematically? Well, they won their first Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes with this like high octane offense that was just going to score a bunch of points. And it's okay if their defense might have been bend, but don't break in some ways because their offense would compensate. Well, last year, their offense spent most of the year figuring things out. Mahomes and Kelce really started to go off in the playoffs, but their defense was so good and smothering that it didn't matter. And so I think that it's just so fascinating when you look at what makes them all great together, that it's not just find the Patrick Mahomes, it's not just find the Andy Reid, it's not just have this certain type of blitz from Spags. It really is this kind of changing but also consistent model that you cannot replicate.
It's very interesting. I just rewatched the Super Bowl yesterday just to kind of get ready for Thursday. And I almost forgot how much the Chiefs offense struggled in that game. They didn't score a touchdown until late third quarter. They really needed that botched punt where the ball hits the 49ers blocker to get anything going on offense. But I want to ask you, Jori, because you've studied this. Let's take Reid and Mahomes. Obviously, Reid and Mahomes are the 2 biggest reasons the Chiefs are good. What do you think, if we eliminate them, what do you think is the biggest reason? Is it that they keep reinventing themselves, or is it something they're doing as far as roster building with the draft, free agency? What is the biggest reason, aside from Reid and Mahomes, that the Chiefs are good?
It's hard because the other things are so dependent on Andrew Reid and Mahomes. I do think the reinventing themselves is a big deal because they're not letting the league pass them by. But I think it's like, okay, on one hand, Patrick Mahomes can make all the plays in structure and out of structure, but that's kind of also one, that's a Mahomes thing, the 2, that's an Andy Reid thing. It helps that because they kind of have this cheat code where because Mahomes makes all the good players look great, they can get rid of a Tyreek Hill. They think, and we'll see, they can get rid of L'Jarius Sneed. And so I think that you have enough of the anchors that you're also not getting so caught up on having to sign every single star who makes a play, which is a pretty bold move. Like, imagine how many teams would not feel comfortable letting Tyreek Hill go. Like, I would love to know if 32 teams were facing that, how many would let them go? And they've got 2 Super Bowls since then. And so I think that you say, like, we understand what's most important. We understand we can't do it all. I think they're almost like not trying to hang on to the past for too long, both schematically and from a roster standpoint.
And the funny thing is, like, the Belichick thing was always, he gets rid of veterans right as they're about ready to hit the cliff. Like, we saw that over and over. The Chiefs got rid of Tyreek Hill, and he's gotten 1,700 yards each of the last 2 years. He's obviously awesome, even outside of the Chiefs, and they still keep winning without him. It's pretty unbelievable.
The real question I want to ask is just, when Travis Kelce retires, and I have no idea if that's in 1 year or 4, what does that do to the Chiefs window? I think that'll be a really fascinating question.
I mean, let's drill down on really the crux of this story. Like, you have one of the best head coaches of all time. working with one of the best quarterbacks at this point already of all time. You have one of the best, if not the best, current defensive coordinator in the league. And you have a GM that understands exactly what his role is in all of this and exactly what to do. And I'll go back to like a music analogy here. Like sometimes when you're building a band, everybody thinks you need the best guitar player and the best bass player and the best drummer in the world. And the problem is if you get everybody in the room that's the best ever and they all want to go out and play a solo at the same time, you end up with a really bad song, right? But if you look at a song like Hotel California, it takes those two guitar players playing exactly in synchronicity with each other while the rest of the band is doing exactly what they're told to do to end up with something that's absolutely beautiful and timeless, right? There's this moment for me where what they've done is they've not only put in tremendous talent, they've also got everybody really comfortable with exactly what their role is and exactly how they do it. And it leads to championship after championship because your deficiencies aren't the same if everybody's swallowing their ego and everybody knows exactly what their role is and exactly how to execute their role to the best of their ability. And when you've got so many people that aren't even on the field that understand that so well, that's what I think organizations miss left and right. Like Spags, you would think at this point he could go almost anywhere. If he wanted to work somewhere else, if he wanted a different challenge, if he wanted to be a head coach, I think he could find himself in those circles. But instead, they just continue to reward him and he continues to be really content in that system. So you just end up with continuity combined with greatness that allows you to just continue to do this over and over and over again. That's so hard to replicate because who's going to be patient enough? And also, who can identify that many great hires at once? Like maybe the landmark of Andy Reid's career isn't just that he's won Super Bowls. It's that he's been able to identify the right coaches, the right relationships, the right GM, the right quarterback, like all of these things at once. That's stunning for any one person to do.
No, I think we have to give Andy Reid a lot of credit for keeping Spags around and for creating an environment where Spags wants to stay around. Obviously, he's had the head coaching opportunity before, and obviously he's not young, and so that helps all of that. But also, Andy realized that was the type of guy he wanted to bring in, and he got him right away, and I think that is huge. Another thing that's huge is that a lot of teams that I talk to feel like for 3 quarters, they can hang with the Chiefs. They're not so concerned that the Chiefs are going to be ahead at the end of the 3rd quarter, but then something happens in the 4th quarter and the Chiefs just kind of take off. And I do think that there's 2 elements. There's one, Rams general manager Les Snead told me that what he admires about Andy is that Andy doesn't say like, this is a circle and I'm going to fit it into a square hole. He says, I have these kind of pegs and I'm going to create the holes that work for these pegs. The other thing is that there's the physical element and there's the schematic element. And there's also the rising to the occasion with an extreme amount of pressure and an extreme amount of eyes on you. And people were basically telling me the Chiefs winning is fueling their winning, which sounds a little bit circular, but it's true. It's like at some point, if you have been in all of these moments, your heart rate doesn't speed up in the same way. Your brain doesn't start to shut down in the same way. You don't overreact in the same way. And so there is this coolness, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes on your team and everyone around is like, yeah, we know Patrick can do this. He's done it in the Super Bowl, so of course he could do it again.
Yeah, I mean, when, again, I was rewatching the Super Bowl when the 49ers, I kind of forgot how that game flowed a little bit, that the 49ers took the lead with less than 2 minutes left. And even sitting here knowing what happens at the end, I was like, yeah, that was way too much time for Mahomes. Of course he's going to. Any other team, you'd be like, whoa, the 49ers are on the verge of winning a Super Bowl. With the Chiefs, you're like, nah. Patrick's either going to win it or tie it. And he tied it and won it in overtime. 2 things you said, Jori, that I want to talk about real quick. What you first said was, yeah, every other team can study the Chiefs and say, this is a dynasty. What did they do? What did they do? And at the end of the day, they're going to come to the end and say, well, we can't get a Patrick Mahomes. We can't get an Andy Reid. So none of this really matters because they cover up so much, especially Mahomes, when you have a great quarterback like that. And the other thing is, and it's actually something I wrote about this week, and it's Travis Kelce. He's been such a big part of what they do. And at some point, the age curve is going to hit. It just has to. And I get he's an all-time great player. He's a Hall of Famer. I hate betting against those guys. But I'm guessing you know the number of 35-year-old tight ends in NFL history that have had a 1,000-yard season. It is a big fat 0. It has never happened before. So if Travis Kelce played in his normal tier, it will be the first time in NFL history somebody has done something like that. Now, he didn't hit 1,000 yards last year, and I get it. But we're talking about the number of good tight ends in NFL history at his age is really just Tony Gonzalez and a couple of maybe random 600-yard seasons. What we're asking Travis Kelce to do is do something nobody else has ever done. So that does worry me because he's such a big part of what they don't win a Super Bowl without Travis Kelce turning on in the postseason last year. And during the regular season, he was very, very good, not great as he usually is. What if he's a little bit of a step down from that this year, and he doesn't turn it on in the postseason. The Chiefs still win at the level that they have been. I don't know, because he is so important to what they do.
Okay, you started to bring me back at the end because you had lost me at the beginning, which is to say that we don't need Travis Kelce to have an 1,000-yard season. And quite frankly, I don't think that's what the Chiefs are asking him. They're asking him to, maybe help along the way. And in the same way that some people are trying to use training camp to get ready for the regular season, the Chiefs need Travis Kelce's regular season to allow him to play super well in the playoffs, to be healthy and to be at that level, and also to have that chemistry with Mahomes at its peak level. But I also don't think that, I don't know. I think they need something different from him than they needed from him 5 years ago.
The thing that I always come back to with the Chiefs, and it's funny because everybody knows my Raiders fandom. And because of that, often people will say, I know. And so often people will look at that and say, see, you're anti-Kansas City. The farthest thing from it. I have so much peace as a fan of one of their biggest rivals with the fact that what they have built right now is such an incredible moment in time. You can't compete with it. You can't year in and year. If your goal is to be better than the Chiefs every single year right now, it's a stupid goal. You're just not going to be able to hit it. But I actually have peace on it because it isn't, to your point, Jori, it's not any one of these things. The number of building blocks that came together at the right place, right? This isn't even just Belichick Brady. This isn't even just that. There are so many other factors that come into it. And for me, it's Jori, you live in New York, and one of the beautiful things about New York to me in the restaurant scene is that there are certain places you can go into and you have no idea what the menu is going to be. You just know that a great chef is going to find the best ingredients and the food's going to be incredible. That's where the Chiefs are right now. Whatever the ingredients are, whatever they can get that's the best for the way they want to run their restaurant that day, they're going to do it. And it's going to be the hottest restaurant in town every single year because the chef is that stinking good. And I actually find peace in it. As a football fan, I can look at it and appreciate the beauty of what the Chiefs are doing. And even as a fan of their rival, I can look at it and say, of course they're kicking the snot out of everybody. They're untouchable. You just got to hope that one year, maybe they fall off the pedestal and that's the year for your favorite team. But I think there's actually some peace in knowing that what they have can't be replicated because I don't want to live in a year or in a world where this is every few years this happens. We need to appreciate this Chiefs aura, this era, I should say, for exactly what it is.
Well, and I also think that when you make that point of the Chiefs are going to just figure something out with the menu. Bears cornerback Jalen Jones, the way he described it is when you have a standard quarterback, which I will withhold which name he used as his example of a standard quarterback, but he did throw a name out there. He said when you have a standard quarterback that you're playing against, the defense needs to say, okay, this is what that quarterback does well. This is their strength. Let's take that away. The problem is, one, Mahomes is strong at pretty much everything, so you can't just take away his strength. And two, you get to this point where it's not about the script. And if you get rid of the script, then they're fine. Because the way that people were putting it to me is their script is off script. They play so much backyard football, so much of the play breaks down. And Andy Reid has them practice that. And so then their broken down play is not that broken down. It's just changed.
My hope is that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes will just get tired of it and retire. That's going to be the easiest thing. All right. We have an actual game to break down. We'll do it. We got to get some bills paid. But when we come back, we will break down Thursday Night Football. Ravens at this Chiefs team we just talked about. We'll wrap it up and we'll preview it for you next. All right, we've been talking about it the whole episode. We have actual football to talk about. Thursday Night Football, Ravens at Chiefs. The Chiefs favored by 3 right now. Frank, I told you as we were starting this episode, I'm not putting any money on week 1 as the dabblers on this show. How you feeling about that line there, buddy? How you feeling about the 3 points for the Chiefs?
Chiefs ain't losing at home 2 years in a row on opening night. That's how I feel. I got a lot of respect for this Ravens team, their infrastructure and all that, but we've talked about this through the offseason. I do think the loss of Mike McDonald is huge for them. I don't know what Zach Orr is as a defensive coordinator, and you're asking him, a young guy who's never been a defensive coordinator before, hey, your first game, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, figure it out, Zach. It's tough. He might end up being a great defensive coordinator, and that's still a tough ask week 1. I also think a huge factor in this game, no Hollywood Brown, but I think that the Chiefs saw enough of Xavier Worthy in the preseason that Andy is just in the lab right now saying, oh, this kid is different. He moves different, and you could see it. He was leaving defensive backs flat-footed at some points, and I think that they are going to have some stuff cooked up for Xavier Worthy that is going to turn the game around and in their favor. I think the Chiefs win this. Not easy because the Ravens are a really, really good team. They're a tough out. They have the MVP. I love Lamar, but last year, Chiefs lose to the Lions opening night, but they didn't have Chris Jones, didn't have Travis Kelce. I think that this year they are motivated by that. The Ravens are motivated by losing the AFC Championship game, obviously, but I don't think the Chiefs are catching them. They're going to be caught sleeping. I think that the NFL putting this marquee matchup week 1 helps the Chiefs. They're locked in right now. They know this Ravens team is tough. They're good. We need to bring our A game. I think they will bring our A game. I think Xavier Worthy has a breakout game. I think the Chiefs win something like, like 28-20 type of deal where it's kind of close, but not really. The Chiefs are always going to be in control of this game. The Chiefs are better than they were last season when they beat the Ravens in Baltimore in the AFC Championship game. I have no reason to believe the Chiefs won't beat them again.
It's so funny because I actually feel differently, and I think that the Ravens have the upper hand because to me, when you look at what the Ravens use to win every year, it's the same general formula, even if they've got a few mixed pieces. And yes, they have a new defensive coordinator, but I don't think they need Lamar Jackson to come in and do something totally different. And what we were talking about with the Chiefs is that the Chiefs do reinvent themselves so often that they're not in midseason form for week one, like to put it a little bit cliche. And so I think that we saw this with the Patriots where it felt like Brady and the Patriots, we'd see them in September and October and be like, oh no, is the dynasty over? And then they'd figure it out. And I think that's by design that they're not trying to, yes, you want to win. Yes, you need to make it to the playoffs, but you are willing to be a little more creative when you're at that level of dynasty because you say, if the creativity now can help us in the playoffs, it's worth it. And so I think you'll have the Chiefs still trying to figure things out and get a little creative, and the Ravens being like, no, we know what we're going to do. And oh, by the way, here's Derrick Henry coming at you.
Yeah, that's
and
a big
oh,
X
you don't
factor,
have L'Jarius Sneed and you don't have that. And like, I think Xavier Worthy will be great. And I think he'll have like a great play or two in this game, but I think it'll be a close game. The Chiefs will kind of try and rally, but this time the Ravens will be the one that get them. And then, hey, we'll see you guys in the AFC Championship.
You're picking the Ravens? You're picking the Ravens.
Let's go Ravens.
Woohoo! That's hot. I like it.
Not by a lot. Like I think 1, 2, 3 points, but yeah.
I respect that pick. That's strong. What do you got? You got to be the tiebreaker, Fitz.
I'm Team Jori. Wow. I'm in on the Ravens.
I'm the only one in.
No, he's not picking the Ravens. He's just like existentially Team Jori.
No. Let's dial that back. No,
he's careful now.
I think. Look, I like the over on rushing for Pacheco and for Derrick Henry. Both these teams, I think, are going to try and run the ball more than we expect. But the Ravens' offense becomes like every team in the league is going to be watching this, trying to figure out what the Ravens are going to do now that they have an actual superstar running back. So to me, Derrick Henry still has a lot left in the tank. I don't care about the previous carries, and he hasn't played with these sorts of weapons around him ever, right? So now you've got a running quarterback that can do whatever he wants in conjunction with what Derrick Henry's going to be. And also, if they stack the box, that's going to create huge opportunities for Zay Flowers. I think Zay Flowers is going to have a breakout year this year. So trying to stop those tight ends and Derrick Henry means everything gets squished in, which means there's going to be opportunity behind it. I think trying to stop this offense is going to be difficult for everybody. By the end of the year, I fully expect the Ravens to have the best offense in the NFL. So I think that starts week one, and I think that starts against the Chiefs. So the Chiefs are going to have to score some points, and I believe that Xavier Worthy has a chance to be a superstar also, but that's just, man, that's hard for me to bank on that week one out of the gate. So I think this feels like the sort of game.
Also a physical defense like the Ravens going at Xavier Worthy, who's got a pretty slight frame, that's going to be a wake up.
You got to catch him first. You got to get hands on him first. He'll run right by you. Like that. Again, that preseason, I was watching that preseason game, week 2, and a couple of highlights. You have to know that Andy and Patrick were sitting there saying, whoa, the defensive backs can't hang with this kid. Like speed is just something that's going to translate immediately, and he runs a 4.21, and you could see it on the field. It translates. He's not just as you wrote about this summer, Jori, he's not just a speed guy either. He's not a track guy. He is a receiver. He ran some really, some routes that nobody can defend. Like, you're just going to be stuck. He's going to hit a big play or two. I can't believe I am the only one picking the defending champs at Arrowhead on Thursday night. You guys are crazy. You guys are wild.
I know we're talking about Ravens and Chiefs, but just to keep us honest here, Fitz, do you think that Jalen Hurts and Saquon are going to be a force to be reckoned with this year? Because I feel like everything you just said about Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, people believe about Baltimore, but then they're like, nah, like Saquon's going to be washed. And it's like, no, I think that when you have that kind of running back with a better cast of talent than they've ever been around and with a running quarterback, kind of what you're saying, like that's why I think that Philly offense should be a problem.
I agree 100%. Philly's offense is yes. I'm not, for everyone that says, well, Saquon, could have an issue or be held. I'm not going to worry about any of that. The wide receivers for Philly combined with Hurts now, I do think that Lamar has proven he's a better quarterback today than Jalen Hurts is. So I give a little bit of an edge there. But yeah, when you start, for me at this point, I think we're seeing a trend over the next 3 years in the NFL where the more that you can beat people in multiple layers, the more you're just going to be able to win football games as an offense. And that's Baltimore, that's Philly. I think they stand out. That's where Philly separates a little bit even from Dallas, who I love this year. But Philly Philly's more variable. We need Stone to start keeping track of this. We should predict the Thursday night game every week, and then we'll see by the end of the year which one of us is the best, because, two of us against Frank here. I just want an early...
How do you guys not pick the Chiefs? I'm floored. I'm floored that both of you are going against the Chiefs this week.
But also, I think that clearly neither Fitz nor I can pull ahead this week in their standings because we're picking the same. So Frank's got that going for him.
I might be behind both of you guys. Who knows?
Frank will be sitting in last place next week.
Lamar's tough to bet against. I'll tell you that. It's not
apparently not
a fun thing. Not a fun thing when you're betting against Lamar Jackson.
If this were the AFC Championship game, the exact same talent, I'm going with the Chiefs. But I think it's just a different part of the year, different psyche.
Look, I'm done betting against the Chiefs in the playoffs. It doesn't matter. There could be 1 second left on the clock, and you're like, too much time for Mahomes. That's just the way it goes. I've lost too much money betting against the Chiefs in the playoffs. I'm not going to do it anymore. I mentioned Stone. He's our producer behind the scenes. He's doing God's work. We appreciate his help as always. You can follow us on Twitter, obviously on X, and Jori, by the way, writing a piece you don't want to miss. It's coming up soon on 18 games. So we'll be able to discuss that in the coming weeks. But really great stuff, well researched on 18 games and how close we are to that. So be sure to check that out on socials, also the Yahoo Sports app. You're almost out of time, but you can still get to yahoo.com/fantasy million. That's your chance to win $1 million playing fantasy. We are not able to win that $1 million. So if you win and you heard about it here, if you could just give each of us a small, tidy reward for referring to you.
2%.
2%, that's fine. Yeah,
I was thinking we could split 10% evenly. We'll go Shark Tank on you. You can take all the sharks here. It'll be fine. Frank and I will be back on Friday. This is going to be the rotation. So you'll get Jori, Frank, and I every week on Wednesdays. You'll get C-Rob, Frank, and I every week on Fridays. And you will get Frank and I every week Sunday night after the games on Inside Coverage. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends, your family, and enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us every single week. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening.